Hello there, people of the internet. I got a pretty fun one for you guys today, but there's going to be some technical talk. Hopefully this helps you guys out. So for the most part, your average shooter here in the United States isn't going to run anything out past like 300 yards. For the most part, people aren't really going to run things out past 100 yards. So the type of bullet that you decide to use doesn't really matter all that much. The type of cartridge, yeah, that could matter if you're going from like PCC pistol caliber carbine to an intermediate caliber rifle, but the types of bullet based off of, you know, apples to apples, if we're comparing the same cartridge to the same cartridge, isn't really going to matter all that significantly. Let me go ahead and talk about how the size of a bullet, how the weight a bullet has is going to affect its capabilities out at a longer distance. So I have two different projectiles, both 8mm Mauser, but you'll notice one is longer than the other. This is Ethiopian 198 grain and this is Turkish 155 grain. So whenever we're talking bullets, the diameter of the bullet has to be a specific diameter in order to safely pass through the barrel of your rifle. Well, if you want to make a heavier bullet, since you can't make the bullet fatter, since it has to be a certain size to go through the barrel, what you do is you make that particular bullet longer. Now, there's some pros and some cons to doing this. Your smaller, lighter weight bullets are going to be traveling faster from the same cartridge. This is simply because if you have the same amount of pressure, which is set by SAMI, it's a certain pressure that the cartridges have to meet. If you have the same amount of pressure, the same amount of force being implemented onto an object, if it is lighter weight, is going to achieve a higher velocity faster in a certain barrel length. Like if you were to pick up, well, I'll use this example, I've used it before. If you were to pick up a lightweight rock and throw it, and then pick up a significantly heavier rock and throw it with the same amount of effort, then that lightweight rock is going to be traveling faster than that heavier weight rock, simply because the heavier weight rock is more difficult to throw than the lightweight rock. It's the same way with bullets. I hear some sirens in the background. I did not do it. I promise I didn't do it. I might have done it. I don't know. I guess it depends on what it is I'm being accused of. But those lighter weight bullets are going to travel faster than your heavier weight bullets simply because of physics. Now, in order for that cartridge to achieve the pressures necessary in order to get a full power pressure from that cartridge, you actually need more powder inside of the cartridge with the lighter projectile than you do with the heavier projectile. That is because the lighter weight projectile is going to leave the barrel sooner, since it is traveling faster than the heavier weight projectile. This heavyweight projectile from an 8mm Mauser round, this 198 grain, is going to travel at around 2,500 feet per second, whereas this Turkish stuff clocks at around 3,000 feet per second. So there is a substantial speed difference there. Now, since the lighter weight projectile will be leaving sooner, that extra powder is going to burn off, of course. Well, it's going to burn off. How would I describe this? That extra powder is going to burn, and the pressure curve of that burned powder is going to be greater, so the pressures are going to be reached, the necessary pressures are going to be reached sooner, which is important because the bullets will be leaving the barrel sooner because it is traveling faster. So if you have a slower bullet and more powder behind that bullet pushing it out of the barrel, that powder is going to burn, and pressures are going to raise and raise and raise until that bullet leaves the barrel. And if you have a slower bullet, then those pressures are going to raise higher until the bullet leaves the barrel than a lighter weight pressure, or a lighter weight bullet would. That is why whenever you have less powder for a heavier bullet, whenever that powder, you know, finishes burning as the bullet is still traveling out of the barrel, the pressure curve will be slower, so we will reach that max pressure after the slower bullet has left the barrel. Hopefully that makes sense for you guys. Now within 300 yards, your full power rifle ammo isn't going to matter much in terms of wind drifting and dropping. However, out at longer distances, you really start to run into some issues with these things. Your lighter weight projectile is going to lose velocity faster because it has less mass. So out at significant distances, a heavier weight projectile will be what you want. It will retain its velocity. Wow, they're really blaring those sirens today. But a heavier bullet will maintain its velocity longer than a lighter weight bullet simply because it has more mass. And as it goes downrange, I wonder what's going on down there. They're all speeding off in that direction, so I know it's not me. But that extra mass will help it maintain velocity. Now, a lighter weight bullet, since it is traveling faster, is actually going to drop less than the heavier bullet. Now, gravity pulls at a consistent speed, so if you have two projectiles of equal weight, but one is traveling faster than the other, then that one traveling faster than the other is going to reach its target before the slower one does. This makes sense because one is simply going faster than the other. So that one that is traveling slower is going to have more time for gravity to be able to affect it, and as a result, that bullet is going to drop a little bit more than the faster bullet. However, since gravity pulls at a consistent speed, it doesn't matter the weight of your bullet. It doesn't matter the weight of the bullet or the speed of the bullet. If you know the distance to your target and how much your bullet is going to drop whenever it goes that distance, then you know how to compensate your point of aim in order to make a hit on target. If you know for a fact that since gravity pulls at a consistent speed, I think it's like 9 meters squared per second, and then it doubles or something like that. 9 meters squared or something like that. Gravity pulls at a consistent speed, so you're able to figure out how far your bullet is going to drop at a specific distance. However, what you're not able to figure out is how much a bullet is going to be affected by wind. Well, you can figure it out. There are ways to figure that out, but the wind in your area might be different than the wind down there, so you got to kind of gauge and figure out what particular wind speeds are. And that might cause some issues. Depending on the length of your shot, the wind might be significantly different in this area as opposed to where your target actually is. So wind deflection is definitely one of the bigger issues that long-range shots have. Whenever it comes to gravity drop, you don't really have to worry all that much with gravity drop if you know how to compensate for that gravity drop. But wind is unpredictable. Whenever you pull that trigger, there could be a sudden gust of wind that comes rolling through that absolutely throws your shot off. Now, if we are talking equivalent diameter projectiles, the lighter weight bullet is going to be more affected by wind since it has less mass. It's going to be easier to be moved around than a heavier weight bullet. The heavier weight bullet with more mass, although it has more surface area to be deflected by the wind, is going to be affected less than the lighter weight bullet because it has more mass and it is more difficult for that wind to be able to push this bullet around. Now, a lot of your extremely skinny bullets, like 6mm, 6.5mm projectiles, are very unaffected by the wind in comparison to something like this 8mm projectile, which would be quite affected by the wind, and that is because of the surface area engagement. So with your like 6mm and 6.5mm bullets, they have a lot less surface area because they are a skinnier diameter, but they have the added mass to a longer bullet. So you have the pros of having more mass without having to worry about the cons of having a larger surface area. That's why these long, skinny bullets are so good at being very accurate out at long ranges. This is a good example. Next time you're riding inside of a vehicle, take your hand and like knife hand your way out of the vehicle just like this, and although the wind will be pushing against your hand, it will push against your hand significantly less than if you increase the diameter of your hand and it catches the wind a lot more. There is much more surface area right here catching that wind. So although the mass of your hand has not changed, the surface area catching that wind has changed, and that is going to dramatically affect how hard the wind is going to push your hand back and forth. So I feel like there was a lot of good, valuable information in this video. I do feel like it got a little bit technical. Here, let's go ahead and run a couple of rounds downrange. I have my Ruger Mini 14 out here. Let me check my headphones, make sure there's nothing alive in these things. But I have my Ruger Mini 14 out here, and I have some 55 grain projectiles. And since I'm only going to be running this at like 40 yards, it doesn't matter what grain projectile I decide to use. However, if I was going to go out to like 500, 600, 700 yards, then having a heavier weight projectile would implement more power downrange, because these 55 grain projectiles would simply slow down more. And that nice, heavy, slender projectile would be a better suitor for a windy day than these lighter weight projectiles. If I had like a 77 or 85 grain projectile going downrange through a 5.56, then once it meets that target downrange, although it will have dropped more because it is moving slower than the 55 grain projectiles that I just launched, once it reaches its target, it will have deflected left or right less because it is a heavier mass bullet. And it will, since it has that mass, it will implement more power downrange than a lighter weight bullet that has slowed down. I do hope this video didn't put any people to sleep. Like I said, I feel like this right here had a lot of good information on it. And if you're a reloader and you're looking at what particular kind of bullet you want to use, then I guess it all depends on what distances it is that you're going to be firing at. So bear that in mind. Bear in mind what the actual target is. I guess I should make a video talking about different kinds of bullets, like tracers and armor piercing, soft point, hollow point, full metal jackets, just all of those different kinds of bullets. But right now I wanted to go ahead and talk about the weight and length of the projectile and the diameter of the projectile, and hopefully this helped some people out that didn't necessarily know all of these little tidbit facts about rounds and the size of them and how that affects them going downrange. Alright folks, thanks for watching. I do appreciate your time. I have some steak thawing, so I'm going to go cook that. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. Like, subscribe, share, description below, link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. I'll see y'all in the next video. Since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.